Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast, coming to you from the Manchester Evening News. My name's Joe Bray, joined by Simon Bajkowski, and it's a few days since City were in action with that Friday night. It's thrown us off with the bank holiday weekend, but at the same time, I feel like I was at a game on Saturday in the PL2, and then we were both at the Youth Cup final on the bank holiday Monday. So I feel like we should start at the Youth Cup final. 27 wins in a row. The 18s, they spoke to them last week and they were saying, sort of with humility, that they were feeling unbeatable, because you would be with 27 wins in a row, and then they went to Villa Park.
Yes, and scored in the opening minutes.
And it was all going perfectly.
And then, lost 3-1, and they deserved to lose, really.
Yeah.
Second best, Villa were very good. Villa are very good.
Yep.
It just wasn't to be. Just one of those games where they just never really looked like they were on it.
No, it just felt like an off day for too many people.
Yeah, which can happen. And it's unfortunate when it happens in a final and in front of 25,000 people. I don't think it was I don't think they were awed by the occasion or overawed by the occasion or anything like that. I mean, we were watching them kind of very early on. They just seemed a bit flat and a bit tired.
Yeah.
But I mean, you went to the game on Saturday, which is complicated, isn't it? But under 21s are in the playoffs.
Yes, they've won the league, but have to go through the playoffs to become champions. Yeah, and played Arsenal and was similarly flat in the 21s. I think there's a few injuries in the academy, and
but also played some of the 18s, didn't they?
Yes,
they had to, and
when that game goes to extra time, they bring on Regan Heskey and Ryan McAdoo, and Stephen Mafouni comes on, and those three would all have started in the Youth Cup final. Two of them did. Yeah, McAdoo got injured, so it's the risk that you carry when you're mixing the players between the squads. Yeah,
and McAdoo, I mean, they signed him from Chelsea last year. He's really young. Is he 17 yet?
I think so. I think he's got another year of Youth Cup.
He's been 16 for most of the year. He's 16 until he turned 17. And just really exciting winger, and sort of the sort who, like you say, you would start. So he was kind of limping around quite sadly with a protective boot round his left foot. Looks like kind of season over for him, which is a shame. And it was a shame for the 18s not to have him. It was a strange one, wasn't it? We spoke to the coach afterwards, and he kind of talks about how he'd been like building up the intensity of training through the week, and I don't know whether
he was trying to, because I'd spoken to him before and after, and he did come off the massive high of winning the Northern Premier League with a 90th minute comeback winner, and they all charge down the touchline and have a pile on. It's brilliant, and he says it's a Hollywood movie, and he was like, I don't want them not to enjoy that and take that in. So he sort of let them have a few days and then slowly took that away and put the Youth Cup on the table. And maybe he's told us that didn't play an impact. It must be hard to manage going from one high to then getting them back down to a sort of a grounded state and going again for another big final.
It's one of those things where, I always have sympathy with coaches doing post-match, because they're trying to sort of, they're being asked for their thoughts and reflections on why did this happen, why did that happen, and they don't know. And we sort of asked him about the players' reaction as well, and he was like, a few of them were thinking like, how did we lose? Like, did we have the best chances or whatever? And which is like a natural reaction, as he said, but like us watching the game were like, no way, Villa were the better team. But those are the things you think, and you don't always have the answers. It felt like he was sort of saying, oh, maybe this was this, and he didn't really know. And it may well have been, as he said, that Aston Villa are just a really good team.
Yeah.
And
they were up for it, and they had a good game plan, and they scored some really good goals.
Their coach was like, we did our homework.
Yeah.
We know how good they are. We know where they are good. We know how they score. They score so many goals because they've been so free scoring in the league. And Villa came up with a plan to stifle that. I think the only thing you would say about City is that the goals they conceded were all avoidable, really.
Which is uncharacteristic given the amount of clean sheets they've got, and
Yeah.
they pride themselves on that sort of really solid defence as much as all the goals they score. And then they concede a simple header from a corner. Second one comes out to a lad unmarked on the edge of the area, and if you've not seen that goal, it's an absolute stunning goal.
But it is a second ball from a corner
with no sort of City player around him.
Yeah. And the third one is another good finish, but the guy kind of runs through too many tired challenges, and it shouldn't get to him in the first place, really. And I think when that happens, when a team that doesn't normally concede goals like that concedes 3 goals like that, you sort of have to say it's an off day. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. Congratulations to Aston Villa, who were very good.
I think if you asked them, would they swap that defeat for any of the wins in that 27?
Yeah,
they would snap your hands off for it, because they've still got one more league game that they can go and win that. And another thing that Oliver Rice, the coach, said was a few of those players are looking at the national final coming up, because favourites to win that Southern League and book the place is Aston Villa, and that would be at City, and that would be a sort of a chance for revenge. And not he didn't say the word revenge, but
he didn't. But
to put things right and
he said,
give a better account of themselves.
Yeah, he said that those players were hoping that Villa win their Southern Division so that they can play them again and beat them again, which is like that. It doesn't make up for the defeat, but it will have, that sort of thing will go down very well with Cheeky Begiristain and Hugo Viana, who were there, and with Pep Guardiola. It's what makes Erling Haaland so good. He misses a chance. He's like, right, when's the next one? When can I score? And it's that kind of, it's very mature for 40 minutes after cup final defeat. Your first defeat since August, like in the 18s, which is incredible in its own right, to be thinking, right, this team have beaten me and I really want to play them again so that I can beat them. That.
And like we say, with the goals they conceded and the chances that they created and missed, they must be able to see how close it is to put that right.
Yeah. And, also, it is a team, regardless of the result, that has a lot of potential for the first team and a lot of talents that they are very excited about. So it's still kind of very bright for them all.
I think Oliver Rice said as well, he said that he's thankful for the opportunity. Now, that could be some of English is his second language, but the message was these games and these experiences can be really, really good motivational tools and development tools, because you've got a team who never lose, and now they've lost in the worst possible way, in the worst game possible. Those coaches, and like you say, Viana and Begiristain and Thomas Cook, and they'll be looking at how those players respond, probably more than winning that competition would have sort of fared them going forward. And City have a long history of being in the Youth Cup final, and they've only won it 3 times. I think might be the 12th or 13th time in the final.
Yeah.
And they produced a lot of good players. I was looking this morning, and a few of the players beforehand, they were saying they remember going to the 2019 final against Liverpool at the Academy Stadium.
Yeah.
And Cole Palmer was there, and he came off the bench as a 16-year-old and missed the decisive penalty. And he's done all right for himself.
He has done all right for himself, yeah.
And I looked in the squad as well, and they had Jeremy Frimpong, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Felix Nemecha, Tommy Doyle, Eric Garcia.
Yeah.
They've not been defined by a Youth Cup final defeat.
Yeah, I mean, that is another final that they absolutely should have won.
Yes,
an absolute goalkeeping howler in the last minute to let Liverpool back into it. But it was, but yeah, these things happen in finals, and they don't define your career if you're good enough, really.
And yeah, I think you just look at the names of City players who have been in finals and won it and not won it. That was a motivation for those players beforehand, and they can look at that as well at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about kind of attacking or promising talents that come through. Probably the most exciting City team got spanked by Chelsea in 3 consecutive finals. Phil Foden, Jadon Sancho, Brahim Diaz, Kelechi Iheanacho, like they were all up for it and all got absolutely battered by Chelsea. So these things and some of those team sheets, like some of the Chelsea players coming through as well, just incredible. And Chelsea really were the dominant force, but City are the dominant force now, they would like to say, and you can't win every time, but getting to the final and winning leagues and things like that is is a marker to say, yeah, we're still here and we're still at the top.
And back-to-back finals is still some achievement as well.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I think Pep Guardiola said as well, he was like, this is the best youth team they've had in 3 or 4 years, sort of going back to the Palmer, McAtee, Liam Delap year.
Well, it was interesting, Pep talking about like a greater intensity. And it's because, I mean, City had built up to be like kind of the best academy under Jason Wilcox, and no one would say, oh, Jason Wilcox did a bad job. He did a tremendous job, but, you know, he moved on and the club moved on. And I am surprised in a good way, and I think a lot of people at the club are surprised in a good way at just how much change and positive change there has been under Crooken, because it's really hard to come in and like continue a winning machine, but also put your own stamp on it. And some of his changes and a lot of his sort of plan basically is radical, and that isn't really kind of, I suppose it is the City way, but it's not. You don't come into something that wins every year and say, rip it up, put all your medals in the bin kind of thing. And he's not done that, but he's fundamentally changed the coaching program every week. And the results are there and they look better. And it's not like, oh, they've sort of jibbed their way to the final or anything like that. Like they've won 27 games in a row, the under 18s. It's incredible stuff. So yeah, it's been a hugely successful year in the academy, but it won't feel like they have the success they deserve unless they're able to win the 18s final and win the 21s final. Because however much careers won't be affected by it, it is still about winning.
They always look for how they perform in those pressure games. So if you lose one final and win another, you're learning from it, aren't you?
Yeah, I'd like the Youth League. They did really well this season, better than they have done in years. They will still be disappointed in that quarter-final defeat, and that will still rankle a bit and sound we could have got a bit further. But yeah, it has been a remarkable year in the academy.
Speaking to, I think, Kian Noble before the semi-final, he said, yeah, this winning run's great, but it means nothing if we don't win the league and win the cup. So I imagine that today they're going to wake up and think that we need to win that national final. But yeah, going back to Crooken, we were at about half an hour in his office last week, and he's so proud of those changes as well, and sort of the buy-in that he's got from, he can name the number of staff that are sort of affected by that, and he's including the staff and the players, and like you say, they're doing sort of Tuesdays and Thursdays of individual sessions on what each player wants to do in a certain situation and wants to improve on. He said something like they're introducing scanning coaches.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what he said, and then he said it again. And they brought in external coaches for different positions for scanning, and it's that sort of attention to detail that
and
wins you 27 games in a row.
Yeah, scanning this thing, isn't it, whereby it's sort of how many times in a game or situations players kind of look at what's around them before. And Kevin De Bruyne is like off the charts on scanning. It's why he's the best in the world. But it's just so many things, hasn't he, that he's brought in. And I don't think the buy-in was fully there at the start. I think he came in and said, I want to do this, that, and that. And there was quite a bit of like, who is this guy? And it has the potential to be a bit David Brent, like, if I'm honest.
I don't want to agree with you, but there are some sort of slogans up on the wall of like... And mottos and stuff.
Well, I mean, Thomas Crooken's big thing is the future player, isn't it? The player of the future. And I remember speaking to him last season, and he turned his phone around, and inside the case for the phone, he had a business card on what is the future player. And he said he'd handed them out to every staff member and player and got them to write on what they thought the future player was. And like, you can imagine these 16-year-olds thinking like, A, what is a business card? And B, like, I'm not keeping this in my phone on display. Yeah. But like the whole program has worked, and it's been huge, it's looking really, really promising. And you're like, well, even if it seems a bit silly or it seems a bit out your comfort zone or anything, like not what you would do, like it has had tremendous results already.
I think his next step is to sort of focus on staff. They've done a lot on players, and now it's can you make the staff better, which in turn makes the players better, and all of it rolls into creating players for a first team, preferably City's, but someone else's as well.
Also, if we're talking staff, Oliver Rice has come in his first year, under 18s boss, and he's sort of come from the Bundesliga where he's had a really good reputation in youth football, but he's come from the Bundesliga and the academy director is from the Bundesliga, so you're sort of under a bit of pressure already. You're under pressure because it's a really successful under 18s in the last few years, and he's done incredibly well.
Won the title back.
Yeah.
Back-to-back youth cup finals. And if they can win that national final, I think.
And the players love him, and he just seems to have brought something new and something really impressive.
It seems like the Oliver Rice and Kolo Toure relationship as well has worked really, really well. And they obviously have the different strengths. And Toure, we saw yesterday, was leading the warm-ups and off his seat all the time.
Yeah.
Until the last minute when the game was gone.
Yeah.
Motivating the players and stuff. And it seems like that they work really well together, and that reflects on the players who really buy into the coaching staff as well. So I don't know, you see some finals maybe in senior football and think, how are they going to recover from this? You don't have that feeling at all with this group.
No. I think the only thing is you would want them to look a lot fresher in the next game.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's been such a good year. You don't want it to sort of fizzle out.
No.
But I'm sure they will be planning to make sure around kind of the under 21s are in the semi-final now and things like that. So they will have more things to watch out for. But they will be champing at the bit to win that national final.
Yes, I think they've got a league fixture in the national final, and the 21s have Manchester United at some point this weekend in that semi-final. So that'll be a grudge match in itself. Let's talk about some senior football. A few days have passed since that Wolves game. Kevin De Bruyne got the winner. Everyone's sort of talking how brilliant he is. He comes out again and says he thinks he can stay, which is his message since he was told that he can leave. And I think there was some supportive comments from him from Jeremy Doku as well. I don't think we need to talk much about the game, but I asked Pep, is De Bruyne playing with something to prove? And he sort of said, no, he's got nothing to prove. But it feels like he's going out on his terms. He's sort of trying to roll out the greatest hits and score those goals and make those tackles. And he's getting the attention that he probably wants. You've got a bit of a different opinion on his sort of form as well, without putting you under the bus.
I don't think he's shown anything since it was announced to show that City should be keeping him on 400 grand a week. I don't think there have been any performances. Probably Palace was the best one.
Mm-hmm.
Was that after the announcement? I think so.
Yeah.
But he did very well to score the goal. But if you're talking about Kevin De Bruyne against Wolves, it's that performance in 2022 when he scores 4 and he's just unstoppable. And we've not seen anything. I don't think we've seen him be unstoppable. I think that's the thing. That is what you miss, where it is just a ball that no one else would play, or a charge and run and goal that no one else would score. The free kick against Palace when he sort of bends it in off the post, fine, but it wasn't one of those moments. And I'm not saying that he couldn't stay next season and have a role, but I don't think he can't think that he can stay on the same wages. And then if you're serious about the club rebuilding, you have to have a conversation and say, well, is it worth keeping him on sort of reduced wages? Or because the thing is, if you take his wage off the books, you can bring in 2 new players. You can bring in Florian Wirtz and you can bring in Morgan Gibbs-White, and you still have change on your wage bill. Your wage bill still goes down, and it doesn't matter how you can spend 200 million on the pair of them, and the amortization, it works. So it's kind of 2 for 1.
Well, he described it, didn't he, as a business decision.
Yeah, and it is. And like, I think Sky on Friday night were like, oh, is it a business decision? It's like, yes, it is. Sergio Aguero was very unhappy when City decided to get rid of him. He thought he had another year or two at the top, and City were very sorry to let him go, but they had to look to the future, and they didn't get him immediately, but they've got Erling Haaland, and he seems pretty good. So,
and even when Gundogan was winning the treble for City, they still were making that business decision not to give him that second year.
Yeah, and it's hard because De Bruyne is, probably the best player in City's history and still has something to give. But I don't think anyone who's watched him this season or over the last 2 years can think, yeah, he can still perform things that nobody else can, like twice a week.
He's also only ever one extension or bad move or bad tackle away from a long injury because of his recent history as well. And I think he's doing well to stay fit and perform to a level at the end of this season.
Yeah.
But you've got to accept that he is missing a lot of big chunks of seasons.
Yeah, and I think
the end of his career
is a wider question around all the older players who have all looked much better in recent weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Ilkay Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Kovacic, De Bruyne, have all looked better. Have they all looked better because City are in a better state, or have they looked better because they're only playing one game a week? I think it's probably more the former, but I don't think you can excuse the latter. And like Pep was asked about Kovacic at Wembley when he was easily man of the match, and he was like, yeah, he's great. He can't do it every 3 days though. You're like, right, well, if this was, they were playing every 3 days and they had PSG or Real Madrid in midweek and Kovacic drops a stinker because he can't play every 3 days, are we as pleased about what he's done against Nottingham Forest? It's one of those. And I think that was the problem for like Gundogan and Bernardo when they were playing every 3 days because no one else was fit, is that there's no kind of get out, and every good performance you might have is then followed immediately afterwards by one where you struggle. And De Bruyne has not really had that because he was injured for 3 months with something that he thought would keep him out for a few days. But he has struggled with it. Twice this season, De Bruyne has come out and said, I've been playing with pain, but now I feel fine. Yeah. And that is after a 3-month injury. So I think he said it in February, and then he said it sort of just after he'd been told he wasn't getting the extension. It's like, well, if that is the case, then it's really difficult for the club to sort of keep you as a marquee player.
It was never going to be an easy decision to not offer that contract.
Yeah, but also sort of, what is a good way to get rid of a player who has done so much for you? Is there a good way? Because when you think about it, like, I don't know, would you rather? I think this season for a lot of people has been sad watching De Bruyne because seeing him unable to do the things that he has done for the last 10 years because of injuries. And would people want him to stick around next year and maybe sort of, come on and run a game against Leeds or run a game against...
I mean, when it was announced, almost everyone was saying, yeah, that's the right decision. Like, it's going to be really sad not to see him in a City shirt, but the form after that should be taken in context that it is after that. And he is now, to an extent, playing for a contract somewhere else.
Yeah. And also, I don't think, like I say, I don't think that form should be enough for people to tell, yeah, no, he should stay. And I don't think he will stay. But, he's very good at pitching himself and selling himself. And I'm sure we'll see which offers roll in. But again, it's kind of like, it's not a nice ending in the sense that he's coming out saying, well, I don't know if I will play the Club World Cup.
And you can tell that he's not happy with it.
Not spoken City about it and things like that. And you can sort of see that I am sure Manchester City would say, look, Kevin, if you don't want to come to the Club World Cup with us, that is absolutely fine. Because he's contracted to them until the middle of the group stage or something like that. So, and that is a conversation that needs to be had. City should be having it even if they're not. But you can also see whereby they're probably focused on qualifying for the Champions League and things like that. There's quite a few players who are like, I'd quite like a new contract, but City are saying we're not doing anything until the end of the season or until we've finished qualifying for the Champions League. So it's not ideal, but I'm not sure there is an ideal way to end.
It feels like he's doing as much as he can to go out on his terms, given the situation, and make sure that everybody knows he feels he can still play it at the highest level.
But Gundogan in many senses had the perfect ending, but in another he didn't, because he didn't get to say goodbye to the fans. He didn't get to say goodbye to any of the players. I think he put it in the WhatsApp group, and that was that. And then he came back. So it wasn't the perfect ending, because he's come back and, he's had a difficult season and things like that. So, everyone wants the perfect goodbye, but it just doesn't happen really in reality.
What we do know is that Etihad goodbye will be against Bournemouth on Tuesday night in a week or two. There might not be any fan protests, but we did see one on Friday against Wolves. We'll address that quickly. The club did come out late on Thursday night, having met with City Matters and made another, I think that it has to be said, positive announcement in terms of meeting some of those concerns that City fans have. Not all of them have been met. For example, fans wanted that Flexi Gold £150 fee removed completely.
Yeah.
Now it's removed if you attend a certain amount of games.
Yeah.
And that ticket still doesn't have the amount of luxuries of transferring to family and friends and stuff. But it is a sort of compromise of sorts, and there's going to be new season tickets in the North Stand. Fans have been asking for that. They still protested because they're not happy about the overall situation. It was another quite effective visual protest. So it seems like we're at a point where fans still aren't happy, but there has been some progress with both through the official channels of City Matters and the sort of unofficial protesting channels, where we're at least moved forward where the club are listening and talking to fans.
Yeah, I think City Matters deserve a lot of praise because they get a lot of stick and have had a lot of stick. They have negotiated a season ticket price freeze after the club wanted to raise them, and they've now negotiated these latest changes, which not everyone's happy with, but and I respect that, but they're also steps in the right direction where the club have listened to fans. There will be at least 500 Flexi Gold tickets from next season, which I don't think people are expecting. And that's at least because if any season tickets are given up at the end of this season, then they will become Flexi Gold. So they will add to that, which people would rather have them stay as season tickets. But I think the worry was that they would become general admission sold every week, and it would be sort of someone completely new every week in the seat. And they have changed Flexi Gold to mean that if you basically get a percentage of your joining fee back for every match you attend, and if you attend 16 out of the 19, then that fee is wiped out. So again, it's not perfect, but it's a move in the right direction. And Flexi Gold has only been in place for a year, and after a year, they've changed it based on what supporters have said. So if supporters keep up this, and that's the other thing, because I think City as a club would have hoped that would have been enough for there not to be any protests. And I think there was a bit of confusion around the groups that had planned the protests to be like, well, what does it all mean? And should we still protest? And they still protested in the end. And I think that was good. And I think it's healthy for the club. A lot of what Pep said is like, I would rather have these conversations and everyone sort of air their views and things like that. What we have seen this season is that fans, when they pull together, they can make a difference, and they can force a club as big as Man City to change, to, reflect more what they want. And I think that has to be the case going forward. But what I also think was terrific from the fans, and what you picked up on in one of your pieces from the game, was that like fans stayed out of the seat for the first 6 minutes, and the ones that didn't make a noise. That second half with all the fans in was one of the best halves of atmosphere at the Etihad in ages. They were singing best defence in Europe for like 15 minutes, regardless of what went on.
With a tight game, you could see the players fed on it. And really sort of use that to get over the line.
And whether it was a Friday night, it was the end of the season, whether it was kind of like there wasn't much going on in the game, so they could do it, but it was brilliant, and it was like this is what we can do. So don't forget about us, and don't think just because you've done this you can appease us all, because we are important and we have value, and we deserve to have a say in things because you need us. And so sort of a positive move from the club, but then I think it was positive from the fans as well to sort of say thanks for that, but we still won't get off your back.
Because I think the changes that were made addressed a lot of the initial concerns from the fans in that open letter a few months ago.
Yeah.
But that didn't account for any of the season ticket changes that have really not gone down well, and they haven't been addressed in the latest update. So you can see why there is still a reason for fans to sort of voice their concerns. Yeah. But I do think that second half, even the first half as well, was after they came out, they made up for that 6 minutes that they weren't there. It's sort of, if the club want this blue wall in that north stand, and the north stand is probably the next issue of like,
north stand's a big issue.
Those
isn't it?
plans need to be confirmed for what it is. Like, if there's going to be season tickets, what they're going to look like, where they're going to be, prices, etc. That's a motivation to make sure that north stand is as good as possible. So I think, I don't think we've seen the end of these protests and the sort of not unease, but the sort of the feeling among fans.
There's a bit of friction, isn't there?
Yeah,
and I think friction is no bad thing. When it's, you don't want anyone being too comfortable, I suppose.
Well, you see that in City and squads and sort of shaking squads up every year. So if I was clever, I'd make a link back to Kevin De Bruyne and use that to wrap up the podcast. But you can add that in yourself. We'll be back ahead of the Southampton game on Friday, where we'll sort of look at that Champions League race, which keeps changing and sort of changing in City's favour, really, and a game against the bottom club, which should go City's way, but it's City this season, and who knows. Thanks for joining us. Give a like and subscribe, a follow, drop us a comment. Do you think the protests have achieved their aim? Are more needed? We'll continue to look over that, and we'll be back later in the week ahead of Southampton. Thanks for joining us.